I love this. Public service announcement. Assuming that woke people can do any service for the public. The only reason that I make this video is that I absolutely hate. No, unironically, is there is one thing in the world that I despise the most is when you have some random twat on the internet saying that this is the correct mindset, which I happen to agree with, and if you disagree with it, you're an awful person. It triggers me. It reminds me of the time that I grew up amongst evangelicals, and it wasn't just any evangelicals, like they were hardcore evangelicals. They were like, Jesus exists, and I know what Jesus wants, and if you disagree with me, you are an evil person. You need to be ostracized. The entire community need to be against you. I have trauma since I'm a kid. Seriously, I need a psychologist. I need a psychologist to wear out the trauma. Because when I see posts like this on the internet, it reminds me of the Vietnam flashbacks of my childhood. So it's like, okay, if you have an opinion on wheelchair in a fantasy role-playing games that isn't neat or representation matter, kindly keep it to yourself because you're an ignorant or a complete jackass. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that I'm wrong, does it? You're not saying that I'm wrong, huh? So maybe I'm right and you're wrong. Sometimes it needs a jackass to expose the truth. All right, let's talk a little bit about the wheelchair. And like, for some reason, right? This is everywhere. As if there's like this big push, like 80% of people who play tabletop games are interested in this subject. No, this is what the left likes to do as a purity test, right? Like, are you pure enough? What is in your heart? Do you honestly believe? And we have this hypothetical, and if you're against the hypothetical, then you're against the left. You can't support Joe Biden if you're against this hypothetical. This is pretty much what it does. Here's my take on the whole wheelchair thing. I'm not against you having your fantasy with literally whatever you want, because that's why it's fantasy. Like, if you want to have a wheelchair in a fantasy, you can. I just think it's a little bit bizarre. Like it's a fantasy. You can have a magic carpet, right? Like you can have an ogre carry you. You can have like two muscular lizards, man, carrying you on a throne. You can have all this cool shit, but your imagination is limited by current day, right? Like, because we have wheelchairs in current day, clearly they must have had those in medieval time. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible, or that it can't be done. I'm just going, it's like, is that really a thing? Like, do you really want to? Like, for instance, I wear glasses in real life, right? My fantasy characters don't wear glasses. Usually, like, my fantasy characters try to be as differential as possible from myself, much to the dismay of Sargon of Akkad. Again, like my character is usually a big titty woman that can cast magic. It's got nothing to do with me. Right? And everyone is like, but why do you play like that? Why can't you just be a male human knight and with the sword? And it's like, because I can do that in real life, right? Like, fantasy is supposed to be different. So if I want to play a character in a fantasy setting that can't walk, I might as well, like, have him be carried by two lizard people, right? Like, that would be cool. It would create an interesting dynamic. But you want it on a wheelchair, like, fine, you know, like, you can be at the table and play whatever you want. My question though, right? Like, usually when I play Dungeons and Dragons, I try to make the game as immersive as possible. So when you get attacked, like, let's say a barbarian hits an orc with an axe, I like to describe the gushing wound, the sound of the bones cracking, the orc making the expression of pain as blood gushes out from his mouth, right? Like, I try to immerse people in that universe. So it's a little bit more than you roll the dice. Oh, you took 5 damage. Moving on. You know, like I just want to add a little bit more visuals, a little bit more graphics. And every single weapon does different type of damage, right? So like a sword just pierces the guts and blood flows out. A hammer, like, you can hear the sounds of the bone cracking. Like, now normally I don't have an issue, but like, if you were to start like wanting to roleplay as a child at my table, and I'm the GM, I don't want to describe what happens when an orc attacks you. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know, maybe I'm squeamish, maybe it's too much. It's the same like if you were to play an elderly lady. You know, I don't want to describe, no. I can do it. I mean, you know, I have an imagination that is rich enough, but I would prefer not to. If it happens, happens once, like the players go out of their way and they find an old lady in a hut and they... Okay, once. But like, must I do it all the time? You know? I also don't want to roleplay sexual encounters. It's not that I'm against them, heaven forbid, or that I don't understand that other people may enjoy them, but not at my table when I am GM. It's not the thing that I'm into. It's fine if you do it, just don't make me GM it, okay? And it's the same thing if it's a person in a wheelchair. Do you honestly want me to describe, as the GM, what happens when the orc uses the warhammer to hit the person in the wheelchair? Do you want me to describe it? Is it okay if I don't want to? Like, must I be forced? Must I be compelled? If it makes me uncomfortable, do you want me to do that? I mean, I can, but like, my enjoyment doesn't matter, right? Do you not see the issue with this? Again, I'm not saying that characters in a wheelchair can't be interesting characters. I mean, you have Professor Xavier, right? Like, he's in a wheelchair and he does the psionic stuff. But I wouldn't want to GM it. You know, I wouldn't want to describe how Professor Charles Xavier is getting hit in the chest, in the torso, by 4 bolts from a crossbow. It's like, no. And especially if the world is realistic, right? That you have orcs that are sadistic and they like violence and they manage to get the character that, no, I get it. It's like, you're not treating anyone. I'm not. I have more sympathy. Like, my heart flows different. I don't know. I can't explain. Does that make me a bad person if I don't like imagining violence towards disabled people in my fantasy? Again, I'm not saying it's a problem. Like, if that's your fantasy, if you like that, that's fine. You know, like I'm not trying to stop you. I'm not trying to say it shouldn't exist, but like, must I do it? Must I be the one at the table that comes up with this? Apparently, I do have a line, and this is where I draw it. I do not like describing violence towards children. I do not like describing violence towards elderly people. And yeah, I don't like describing violence towards people with disabilities. Right? Apparently, on the internet, I am an asshole for believing this. Well, I'm sorry, but it is what it is. Maybe I am disabled as well, because I'm not capable of doing something that everyone else can, huh? Let me know what you guys think, and if you want to support the channel, there is a link into the pinned comment. You're going to get buyer's remorse in exchange for it, and I'm generally curious what you guys think. Do you think like my stance is unacceptable or not? I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.